Hi, Dad. Welcome back to another episode of Dave and Andy's Honest About Life. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Andy. Hi, how are you?
I am well, thanks. Thanks for asking. So, I know the things that you really enjoy in retirement, actually, in your career are, everything to do with weather. And so you have mentioned in previous sessions and earlier sessions that you still continue to be fascinated by what's going on in that space. And at some point, we can really get into the weeds about how you feel about where the whole planet is going, and sort of on a global scale. But one thing that I remember you talking about was the significance of the smoke, the haze that comes from Canada, those wildfires up in Canada. They drift as far down. I know that you're in Minnesota. You've had some really bad air quality days in Minnesota. After all, you're a little closer to Canada than Virginia. But we've had some pretty hazy days here too. What does that mean? What does that mean for the rainfall, for the temperature that we experience?
Yeah, it has a lot of effects on, as you said, temperature, but also rainfall. Rain needs condensation nuclei. Every droplet that forms in a cloud has a nuclei in it, and that's a dust particle or smoke particle. So there are benefits, but unfortunately, the way this has been this year has been horrible. And it's because it's been so dry in parts of Canada that is overwhelming the whole system now. So it kind of feeds on itself, where you've got too much in the atmosphere, too many condensation nuclei to actually benefit. And it works the other way. It can give you a drought because the system is just overwhelmed. There's not enough moisture to go around. But we do need a small portion of that in the atmosphere. This dry period that's happening right now, I think our weather is cyclical, and we're going through one of the worst cycles in our weather that I've seen. And I think we're going to come out of it. When you think back to the 30s, the Dust Bowl years, that was a huge era too, where it was dust, and they had smoke in the air back in the 30s from wildfires that they didn't put out, because they couldn't. But also the dust in the air is another overwhelming effect, and that plays a whole factor in how the atmosphere works. The jet stream is one of our most important transporters of moisture, transporters of storms, obviously. And as that Dust Bowl period built and grew on itself, that arc in the atmosphere, that huge ridge in the atmosphere, grew stronger and stronger. And that was right in the middle of the country. So unfortunately, it was building on itself. And the drier it got, the more dust there was, the drier it got again. And so you kept on feeding on all those things. And you really start to appreciate how things are connected in the atmosphere when you start to see a fire that's now creating a gigantic drought somewhere, or it's creating beautiful sunsets, beautiful sunrises. Some of the orange rubber ball, it's just amazing. It's some of the sunrises and sunsets we've had. So it can be beautiful, but it's also very destructive and very bad.
How long did the Dust Bowl last? Do you remember that? I mean, I don't expect you to remember. Do you remember the Dust Bowl? No.
Because that was before me. I'm not that old.
Didn't mean to say it like that.
Yeah, it was for a period, I believe, from the late 1920s to the early 1940s. So it's about a 10 to 15 year period that it lasted. I mean, it was horrible.
Really?
Yeah, so those poor folks really had to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays we have ways to help prevent that type of thing from happening again. And that's because we have more power to put out some of these wildfires than we've had in the past. However, this year they've been out of control. So it kind of shows its negative side and its very bad side when you can't control things. And humans love to be able to control everything. Well, we can't. So you know what? We have to deal with what we have, and we have to make the best out of it. And that's what we're trying to do.
I appreciate that. You talk about some of the places we choose to put our resources. I know that Canada has decided to let a good number of those fires burn themselves out. Unfortunately, I think it's not going to be until what, late fall, winter, probably before it gets cold, precipitation and some other things that would help put those out naturally, right before they really become effective. But it sounds like they've had to pick and choose, based on who's threatened by a fire, how populated an area is, et cetera. But what's interesting too is you think about, to your point about, having the ability to change the weather in some respects, and maybe we do, we're able to bring water to some of these areas with helicopters, with airplanes, and put them out. But you think about the long-term effects of that, and is it just? And the other thing is, we haven't heard that much about the fire season in California. They probably do have some fires there currently. Here it is, August in 2023, but it just, the human condition where our attention span just jumps from one thing to the next. And now it's politics, right? It's Trump, it's Biden. That's what we're talking about. But in years past, it was day after day of fires in California. So I wonder about how the human condition and our attention span affects where we spend our energy, because you're not telling us, the media is not telling us about something, then we're not paying attention.
That's a very good point, Andy. That's that deep. I didn't realize you could get that deep, but no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It is interesting how humans do try to compartmentalize what they've got and then put it in their basket, the basket that they have care about. And then, humans are egotistical. We do think that we can change everything, and unfortunately we can't. And one of those things is overall, climate-wise, I don't believe that we can change what's happening to a great degree. There are certain small things that we can change, like putting out a fire. But as far as the global picture goes, it's huge. The global climate is gigantic, and it's much more powerful than we are. But we think we can change it, and that's good to us. I'm glad that we can at least hope that we can change something. But there are a lot of things that we really can't, but we can put our efforts in the right spot. And I've talked about this before, how much money we put into certain things like climate change and global warming, but we don't put them in certain other things that are polluting. And I'm not talking about carbon, I'm talking about, acid rain. And I've talked about this before. You and I used to go every year fishing up north in northern Minnesota, and how we saw the changes over time with the pine trees dying, and that was from acid rain. And that I'm sorry is a lot of the steel mills that are going on that sulfuric acid comes from sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide is one of the greatest outputs from making steel, and you add water and you got sulfuric acid. Yeah. And that's what acid rain is.
I think you bring up a good point. I think over the years, over 20 years, maybe more than that, we saw what looked like the acidification of the water and of the land. And that was, it looked like it sterilized everything. Yeah. So, we only have a couple minutes left, but, when we start to think about how we spend our energy, spend our money, spend our time, it feels, even though we have the resources to be able to pay attention to every corner of the earth. What I mean by that is there's media channels, there's our mobile phone that gives us access to all this endless information. You'd think that would sort of level the playing field, but it still feels like we're jerking from one story to the next. And, when you talk about steel mills, you think about those folks who are watching this video who are somehow connected to the steel mill workers, how they might not want to hear about the pollution that they're putting out because it could affect their lives. Or you think about the coal, out here in the East, you got West Virginia, you have Virginia, you have other states that, driven by coal mining. They don't want to hear about plans to, defund their coal mining efforts.
And I'm never thinking about defunding. What I'm talking about, Andy, is spending our money on the technology to help clean things up, clean, the output up, all of those products that, can be used to clean, to add, not take away. I totally agree with you. Would never want to take away somebody's livelihood. And so I don't want to subtract, I want to add. And by adding, what I mean is adding technology to these different industries that can help clean things up.
Yeah.
And,
I like your thinking, and I certainly don't mean to make it sound like we're challenging them. We are in a good way. We're saying, hey, there's got to be a better way rather than just cut it off and be done with it.
Right.
There's got to be a way to transition more gently, or to find a better use for it, or whatever. My point really wasn't about challenging them, but it's really how we react that is so disappointing. I think at times we just, today it bothers me that, not me in particular, but it might bother a group of people that, we're talking about ending fossil fuels because there's so many that depend on delivering fuel to, there's got to be.
Humans are good at knee jerk.
Right. We really are.
We can't. We got to think about stuff before we do.
Level it up. Level our reaction. Balance our reaction. Instead of, I'm going to spend all my money in this area, and then I'm going to spend all my money in this area, and it's just. Anyway, we're out of time, Dad, but I really do enjoy these times. And thank you so much for doing this.
Love you, buddy. I enjoy them as well.
Love you, Dad. We'll see you soon. Okay.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.